Hey, welcome to Local Legacy. I'm your host, Nick Smith, where I sit down one-on-one, interview cool people with cool jobs and some amazing stories. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Local Legacy. Today, I got my good friend Bryce Perez in here today. We're going to take you through a story of Bryce, career, the family man, the fitness journey that he's been on the last couple of years. And so Bryce, appreciate you, man, coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Do me a favor, introduce yourself to the people and kind of tell us a little bit about yourself.
Like you said, Bryce Perez, born and raised in Antioch, California, father of 3 children, married, together 17 years. Grew up here, went to school here. Now I live in Oakley, California. Love the California Delta, love the water sports, love to fish. Everything about here I love. Let's see, I worked for a general contractor in my late teens, early 20s. Recession hit, got laid off, got a job at Sutter Delta Medical Center in the materials department, and worked there for 7 years. After that, I got into the IBEW apprenticeship program. I tested 3 times to get in. Third time, I got a tutor, actually passed. And it was a 5-year program, and that led me into becoming a journeyman electrician. And soon after that, I was offered a position for Local 39 stationary engineers, working in San Francisco, doing building maintenance. Basically, anything and everything that goes on in the building, we have control over, anywhere from the keys to the HVAC, plumbing, electrical. I've been doing that sort of stuff my whole life. Father was a union painter. I've probably had a paintbrush in my hand since I was 8 years old. Mm-hmm. So been around the trades all my life, and after working in the city for about 1.5 years, I was offered a position at Kaiser right here in Antioch, graveyard shift, and been doing that ever since, which has allowed me to start my own business, hauling and construction services, doing some handyman type work, and got my LLC doing that, and currently waiting on my application status for my general contractor's license. So busy, tired, but what are you going to do?
Right. No, I think it's well worth the energy that you put into it.
Trying to see where this can take me, you know.
Right.
Always kind of had that entrepreneurial spirit. Mm-hmm. And I listen to a lot of guys that are doing it, and yeah, it's hard work, but the risk takers are the ones that I see seem to succeed and do what they want in life, and I'm going to give it all it takes and see where we go.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic, and being friends for as long as we have, probably 20-something years. It's been a long time. So all the way back to our high school days, watching that journey and watching you progress is really one of the main reasons I wanted you to come in here and sit down, because you've always been a go-getter. You've always been super hungry. But while doing that, you have this art and this knack to create super stable, real relationships. And I've always attributed that to the way you were raised. And I know your mom and dad, and they're amazing people. Your brother's awesome, like a great family. And you mentioned your dad briefly in there, but I think that work ethic that you developed as a young child with him has really, really paid dividends now.
Yeah, raised great parents, 4 of us, me and my brother, and both parents. Pops was always working. He would, we lived a great life. We were well taken care of. There was side jobs that probably needed to be done to go to Disneyland, and our biggest vacations and my fondest memories were camping. Mm-hmm. So on the lake, doing stuff like that. And my mother, one of the most loving people I know, or if not the most loving person I know. That's probably where I get some of my personality to create friendships and succeed in what I'm doing. And I'm just open and honest, and I don't I don't BS anybody. I'm just who I am. So I guess who I am is help me out and where I'm going.
Yeah, no, I think it's a culmination of all of those factors coming into one, and then you really trusting and believing in yourself to be able to make the jump. And you read quite the resume there of work that you've done, jobs that you've had. But take me back a little bit, if you can, to when you were working for that construction company, right? The recession hits. What is kind of that thought process going on then in that time? If you can take me back there.
Yeah, that was 2007, I believe. I worked for Wallace Termite and Construction, great company, family-owned business. I think they've been at it for over 30 years now. At the time, right before I got laid off, I had my daughter Jade in 2007. So she was, man, young, and I was still young. I was, I think, 22 or 23, and still in the partying stages and living with roommates. We've definitely grown up together. She's seen the struggles, the hardships, and stuff like that. Some self-inflicted, But it was a hard time, and I was fortunate enough to land a job at Sutter, which, got me good health care, dental, stuff like that. And prior to that, I worked at Safeway, and they're big on customer service and things like that. I've always enjoyed being around people and doing stuff like that. So it just kind of, I enjoy making people happy, and I enjoy showing off my skill set and craft, and probably like getting praised for it, you know. So
no, for sure. And if you don't mind, I want to dive a little bit into being that young father, because our oldest are the same age, right, but different situations, right? So how you mentioned growing up together, and I can't imagine kind of what that bond is like. Like, she probably saw some things or went through some experiences, like real life experiences, at a young age. So how does that work between the two of you, and how is that connection, developed?
Well, yeah, when she was born, me and her mother weren't together. We dated for a while, and things didn't work out, and so she split time between us. When she was, I think until she was 2, I think she lived primarily with her mom. And then after, she started going to school and everything else, we shared custody of her. And, she's straight A student, travel softball, never gotten a B in her life. Amazing kid. I couldn't ask for anything better than what Jade is. Yeah. And she's just excelling in everything she does. Very determined individual. I'd like to take credit for that, but strong-willed. Her mother is very strong-willed too. We're both hard-headed individuals, and she's definitely hard-headed as well. So I think that's going to be a good asset for her to go on in life. But yeah.
I always say that with my girls too. Like, they're stubborn, they're super hard-headed. But if we could just get them going in the right direction with that, then they're going to be, extremely successful business owners. They're going to be CEOs. They're going to be difference makers out in the world. Yeah. If you channel that into the right direction, and that's part of our job as parents, and especially as dads, is pushing them in those directions.
Yeah, I definitely push her. She probably doesn't like all the, Instagram stories or memes I send her, all the motivational speeches and stuff like that. I'm sure I get a lot of eye rolls that I don't see on top of the ones I do. But like I said, she's determined, and she knows what she wants to do. She wants to go into nursing. She's just been accepted to Nevada, Reno.
Oh, nice.
And yesterday she just told me Sonoma State as well. She's got one other application out to San Diego, and I have no doubts that she's going to get accepted and be able to choose what she wants to do. I know that I have nothing to worry about with her. She knows what she wants, and she doesn't put up with anything. And I attribute that to, I always try to flip things or say, what's the good out of this? Her mother and me not being with each other gave her the opportunity, when she didn't like necessarily what was going on in my life, to choose to live with her mom. So
she's had standards from a young age.
She's got standards, and she's going to set them, and she's not going to put up with anything that she doesn't want to, and I think that's awesome.
I think that is phenomenal. So then you transition from Sutter Delta, getting into the union right after that.
Yeah.
So what made you kind of leave Sutter Delta to go into the union?
It was the pay. I enjoy working with my hands. I was in materials at Sutter, and it was decent pay and everything else, but I wanted more. I wanted more out of life. I wanted, like I told you earlier, my dad, he worked for Redwood Painting for 25 years. He was always in the refineries and stuff like that. I wanted to see what that was like.
Gotcha.
I like to not be at the same job site all the time. I like to see different things and do different things, and it led me to applying for the apprenticeship. Actually, now that I think about it, I was working with a union electrician at the time, and he was laid off at the time, and I had a small landscape company, and he's the one that told me to apply again for the third time, and I did, and I got a tutor, and I passed. So that's kind of, everything happens for a reason, I think, and that's where it led me into that. And it was a 5-year program. At that time, I had 3 kids now, so I was a little later than most get into the trades at 30 years old. So my wife was at home with two babies, and I would be out until it was school 2 nights a week. So I'd be out until 9:30, 10 at night, not getting home, having to wake up sometimes at 3:30 in the morning to go back out to work. And
that was for 5 years.
That was for 5 years, a 5-year program.
Wow.
So it was hard work, but it was worth it. Paid off in the end.
Right.
Developing any sort of trade skill set like that at a high accredited trade school, it opens a lot of doors for you.
Yeah, that's awesome. I want to touch a little bit on the family aspect while you're doing that, but I can't go without mentioning, what was it, the American Landscaping? Do you remember the name of it?
Yes, it was American Gardens.
American Gardens.
Landscape maintenance.
First landscapers I ever hired in my life.
That's right. That's right.
Way back then, and they did good work.
Yeah.
They actually, I wish they were still in business because they did.
Well, you never know.
Right.
The business that I have right now, TB Hauling and Construction Services.
Right.
We don't really, we have a set things we do, but we don't know what direction we're going to go in.
Yeah. It could be all encompassing.
I want to take over the world.
Right. Right. Yeah. No, that was awesome back then. So, and that was just two buddies that started it, and you guys just went for it, man. And that's always been super admirable about just, man, shoot or shoot. Just keep shooting.
Yeah,
right?
you have to
keep shooting. But talk to us a little bit about that time when you were going to school multiple nights a week. You said you had a young family at that time. Were you married to Kaylee at that point?
Yeah.
So you guys were married at that point. That's tough. That's hard on a young family, and especially early on in a marriage, right? It's super difficult when you just start testing things like that over and over again, right? To not know the end goal or what the end result's going to be, but going through that grind of like, I gotta go. How did that work at home?
It was probably a lot harder on Kaylee than it was on myself. She had 2. Was Ryan born yet? Not quite, or I think towards the end.
Okay.
But she had Cruz at home. He was a toddler, and I wasn't getting home till late, and then I just had to leave in the morning. So there was a lot of days I wasn't there. And I missed a lot of things being away at night. So she's definitely put in the work, put in the effort. She's amazing. This time in my life now I'm into eating healthier and counting my macros and things like that. And when I open the refrigerator, my macros are laid out, my food's laid out. It's been a blessing.
Yeah.
She's no slouch, and
she doesn't mess around in the kitchen either.
No, she doesn't. And she puts in probably 16, 17-hour days just like I do.
Yeah. No, I think that is awesome, and then to be able to develop from that into what you guys have now. So let's fast forward a little bit into Kaiser, and you said you're working graveyards there, but at the same time you're trying to get this new business off the ground at the same time, going through all the loopholes and procedures and licensing and all the things that are necessary for that. So now you're burning at both ends of the candle, right?
Yep.
So how is that going for you now?
It's going good. When I started off, it was just hauling. I have a 15-yard dump trailer, and for the most part, it was just kind of sitting there. And I'm like, well, what can I do with this dump trailer? And I just kind of started advertising that, I'll bring my dump trailer to your house. I'll drop it off. You load it up. I'll haul it off for you. I'll charge what Home Depot charges, except you don't have to go to Home Depot. I drop it off and I take it to the dump for you. And then that kind of turns into, well, hey, can you do this? Hey, can you do that? Well, yeah, I've been doing it, most of my life. And so I was like, okay, well, this is taking off once again. And I need to probably do things the right way. Get my LLC, which I have, and apply for my general contractor's license, because the jobs keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And, the more credentials or the licenses you get, the more you can advertise, the more, the more avenues that open up. And it was tiring at first, but I do have a couple guys that help me out, and they're great. My hardest part is running the work. I'm not necessarily swinging the hammer all the time or on the tools, but dealing with clients on certain things and aspects of things, and you have to make sure your work that has your name on it is up to your standards. So you have to have a team around you.
And knowing where you came from and the work products that your dad would put out, and then seeing the work that you've put out yourself, I always would tell anybody, I'll put Bryce's finished work up against anyone's.
Yeah, and except my father's.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yes. But being able to see that and know where your standard is for the guys that you're bringing with you, one, it just elevates them as individuals, right?
Yeah.
As subcontractors, as guys that are helping you out or whatever. But then it also raises the bar in the industry. It raises the bar of the expectation of quality of work.
Right.
And that's what really separates somebody like you from maybe another general contractor who doesn't have all the unique aspects that have been put into you, from Safeway's customer service to procedures with the union to hospital care, right? To all these different avenues. Now you put it all into one thing.
Right.
And it's like the bar is so high. I've seen the work you've done. I mean, when I remodeled my house, like, you would just show up and be like, what are we working on today? Like, I got to tear this floor out and I have no idea how to do it. And it would be like, A, B, C, D. Oh, let's go down to the shop and we got to rent this tool. This is what you need, right? It's just like, so you always go above and beyond, man. Something I've always appreciated, going through, my own home projects, trying to do my own stuff. So having somebody behind you like you has always been a super blessing for me. And for the people that you come in contact with too, man, for sure.
Thanks. Yeah, it's, what I've heard from a lot of customers these days is shoddy work from, contractors. Not all. I'm just,
right. Of course.
And customer service. You just have to be willing to work and help people navigate through their project and their process.
Yeah.
And that's where you make them feel at home and comfortable. And if you can do that and create a good product and say, hey, this and this needs to get done before this and this can get done, you're saving them money in the long run. Right. Because you're not ripping things out or having to reduce stuff because they were done wrong or not in the right order.
Yeah. And the homeowners, they don't know that, or people you're doing work for, right?
Most don't, some do.
The process,
right. And there's different levels of owners too,
Right.
Some owners aren't necessarily your customer.
Right.
That's one thing I've learned over the last couple of years is, you have customers and then you have some that aren't.
Right. That's fantastic. Yeah.
You can't make everyone happy.
No, you can't. You can't. But you got to, as long as you can put your head down at night, right? And know that you're putting your best foot forward, that's super important. So that's the business aspect of Bryce. One of the things I wanted to really dive into is the personal growth aspect of you as well. Watching your journey over these last couple of years has been phenomenal. Seeing what you've done, not only physically, but mentally as well, to really raise your bar of who you are and your character is super inspirational. So let's go back to, a couple years ago, or when this journey kind of began, and did you have an aha moment or something specific that stood out to you, or was it more of that internal person that says, I know I'm better than what I'm showing.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm almost, like I said, I'm almost 42 now. I saw this quote the other day. It said the first 40 years is research.
Oh.
The next 40 years is applying your research. That kind of
Awesome.
stuck with me.
Yeah.
For some people, it's 30 years. Some people, it's 20 years.
Yeah.
It takes me a while to learn.
Yeah.
So I had some health issues. I have sleep apnea.
Uh-huh.
I was 330 pounds, high blood pressure, pre-diabetic. What else? Cholesterol levels were, and I'm realizing my kids are getting older and how fast time goes.
Yeah.
And at some point, it clicked in my head that, hey, I'm not going to be around for these kids' weddings. I'm not going to be around for my grandkids, So it really, I'm an alcoholic. So my oldest daughter, not putting up with anything, her not being around as much anymore and not liking my lifestyle really played a big role in that. But that being said, you have to do these things for yourself before you can do stuff for somebody else. So that went into me being 100% in on everything, I guess. And I've tried quitting drinking before, and it didn't work because I just drink on the weekends,
right?
Or I'll only drink beer.
Yeah. Right. Always making excuses for ourselves.
Well, so it didn't work, and that I think was the health issues and my daughter not putting up with it really kind of light bulb aha moment, and so. I white knuckled it. I didn't reach out for help. I didn't go to AA. That's probably why I dove into starting a business and keeping not my mind off of drinking, but keeping myself busy. I don't really watch sports. I don't sit down too often and hang out on the couch. It's just not in my DNA.
Right.
My father's the same way. I grew up watching him. Putting in his own flooring and crown molding. His yards are beautiful, So I was always like, I don't know why that guy does that. Well, here I am. So I quit drinking. It was hard, You have to get in your own feelings and you have to deal with your own real emotions. And it's not easy, I was depressed. I would say I was suicidal, And I knew that there's a chemical imbalance in my head. And it was probably due to the drinking, the repetitiveness of the binge drinking and then being hungover. Well, I'm going to need to go get a couple more, to take the edge off, the anxiety, the depression, stuff like that. So there was a lot of walks that I would do daily if I didn't feel like going to the gym. And like I said earlier, I love the water. And so I would go walk, Big Break or Marsh Creek Trail or downtown Antioch and just look at the water. And there was a lot of times where I was by myself, just, kind of crying and trying to figure things out and not giving in to going to the store and picking up a bottle or whatever. So with that, you gain momentum, right? And now it's not even a thought in my head to, have a drink,
No.
So.
And how long has it been?
It was 2 years on the 2nd of February.
Yeah.
So it's a process, but it's, and there was times, I would say after a year and a half, you get this thought like, oh, I think I could have a cocktail,
Right.
You kind of, and I have been to AA meetings. I don't go consistently. I've probably been to maybe 10. But I remember going on a vacation and thinking, maybe I'm on vacation, I can relax a little bit, And I had this fantasy of how I wanted to do it, and I didn't because it wasn't the way I wanted to do it, and I'm glad I didn't.
Right.
And then I ended up going to a meeting, and someone had talked about the alcoholic fantasizes about being able to drink like a normal person.
Wow.
I'm like, oh, well, there you go, So
Wow.
it was eye-opening. So,
Yeah.
Well, I didn't need that drink, and thank God I didn't. I don't know where it would have led.
Right.
I might not be here today talking to you. I might have been hungover in bed, or
Right.
It's just I'm grateful I quit. I used to say I'll take life off my years before I take years off my life. I was not living life.
Yeah.
I was present, but I wasn't present. So,
Right. And
life's-
you were always you were always the life of the party too, right? You
Right.
were the energy guy, right? You're always smiling, always having fun.
Yep.
But a lot of that was almost like a false happiness coming out, right?
Yeah, it's alcohol does that to people, right? That lets you take the stressors off and be more social and things like that. And I'm still a social person, still go out. I've been to bars.
Yeah.
Don't need to drink.
Right.
I'm not on the dance floor.
Right, right.
I lost my moves, but what are you gonna do? You
Right.
know what?
It's
Pick
worth
one
the
over the other.
sacrifice,
Yeah,
right?
Sorry, ladies, I can't cut up a rug anymore. So yeah, it's definitely been the best thing I've ever done for myself and my family. So
Yeah.
if you're thinking about doing it, I would say 100% do it.
Yeah.
It's not easy, but do
Right.
it.
But also, you don't have to do it that way either, right? You
No,
don't have
there's
to do it alone.
There's tons of help out
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And most people can't do it
Right.
on their own. And there's tons of resources out there.
Right.
And so, however you need to do it, do it. One of my biggest influences is seeing friends that I know that have overcome their own addictions, whether it was heroin, alcohol,
Right.
any one of those, and they were open and honest about it, and I'm like, man, if they can do it, I think I can do it too, and everyone's rock bottom's different, but it's definitely possible, and life is so much better.
Yeah. And I think that coincides with when you really dove into physical health too, right?
Yeah.
You became the gym rat at that point.
Yeah, and
Mostly.
that was more for my mental health,
Yeah.
That was my therapy, and there was days, like I said, I didn't feel like going, but I would make myself at least go on a 30-minute walk. You know what I mean? Just to clear my head and put my headphones on and not look at my phone and be in my own space. And then, you start seeing results over time and you're like, oh, well, hey, this is fitting better, and I had this perception of myself, as a 300-pound man that I still looked good and I still had it,
Right.
and then I see pictures of myself now
Crazy.
when I was a 300-pound man and I was like, what was I thinking? I was got a little bit too much confidence.
Right.
It's very humbling to take those pictures and see them and realize how far you've come.
Yeah.
And that you don't want to go back.
It's super impressive. The transformation is.
It's great. The knees don't hurt, the back
Right.
doesn't hurt. My wife says I don't snore anymore.
Oh.
So, and I do have the sleep apnea machine, but I don't use it anymore. I don't snore,
Yeah.
Unless I'm really tired, I
Right.
guess, apparently.
Right.
So, but yeah.
I want you to share with us now. You're not a completely different person now, but a lot of you has changed, in the span of the last few years in who you are as a person and the makeup of you. Now, how does that correlate to the home life now with the kids and with the wife? And, what are the benefits of you, letting them see it, right, and experience it?
Yeah.
And show them instead of telling them you need to A, B, C, D.
Right.
You're living it.
Yeah. Back in my day, I had 4 touchdowns in one game,
Right.
Yeah, right, Dad.
Yeah, right.
Type thing. So it's definitely, I think, and they probably don't see it now, but I think when they get older, just as, I did myself, they will see, it's possible, it can be done. Your life doesn't have to be the same if you don't like the way you're living
Right.
or the way it's going. There's options, but you have to put in the work,
You do.
It's, like I said earlier, I try to turn the negatives into positives. You can't dwell on the negative. You got to keep moving forward. That's why the rearview mirror is so small, right?
Yep.
It's behind you. You have to do those things, and you don't have to. You have to be willing to. And I think them seeing me, being drunk, passed out on the couch, whatever, and seeing that, turn it around. It was a negative, right? But they don't have to see that anymore, and they can see, they can take learning from my negativity and my past that doesn't have to be that way. I always go back to sayings and stuff. There's a father and 2 kids, and the father was an alcoholic, and the 2 boys, one was an alcoholic and one was on the straight and narrow, and the one lady asks, well, how did you become an alcoholic? And he said, well, I watched my father. And he said, well, how come you're not? And he goes, because I watched my father. So, everyone has a choice.
Yep.
It's a disease,
Yeah.
whether some people think it is or not, it doesn't start out that way, but it'll grab a hold of you.
Yeah.
And, best thing to do is fight.
Yeah, no, for sure, 100%. And then show people around you. And that's one cool thing you've done is you've been very public with your journey.
Yeah.
Right? You've shared the good times. You've shared, the growth that you've had. And then in turn, right, people reach out to you.
Yeah.
And they say, hey, because of you, I'm going to do this. Or not necessarily maybe because of you, but because you shared what you're going through, it made me comfortable or willing to, or open to the idea, right?
Yeah, I've inspired some people to take the step. Some people are more open about it, and some people aren't. But I'll get messages in my inbox. Hey, because of you, I'm going to treatment, or hey, I've been sober for 6 months. I just got one a couple months ago. Hey, I just hit a year. I wanted to say thanks. For being open and honest. And I see it too in friends I have. That we were big partiers, and on the weekends or whenever. And I've seen their lifestyles change too. I've seen them start to get in shape and think about the health risks and concerns. Not just drinking, but we're all getting a little bit older, and I think we all kind of realize we're not going to be here forever.
Right.
And I'll post my workouts and my progress pictures or stuff like that, and people ask questions. Hey, how do you do that? How do you do this?
Yeah.
So I take pride in that.
Yeah, no, 100%.
It feels good to help other people.
For sure.
Just like with the business, it's just another aspect of, that's
connecting, helping, serving.
Yeah, that's what I get joy out of.
Right. And I'm definitely one of those guys, right? I've been in your inbox a lot.
Yeah.
For some reason now I'm counting my macros.
Yeah.
Right.
And what are those?
That's right. Here's the app. Here's some food. Hey, follow this guy on Instagram if you want some good recipes. If it's a taste of bland, like just constantly helping, which then in turn allows somebody like myself who has had no background in any of that. I didn't even know what macros were.
Yeah.
Right. And so now I have a way better understanding of what's going on, with them, and then how can I then influence my kids and my family, to be good. So now if you open my fridge at home, it's all pre-made. There's different options. You want to have chicken today? Great. You want to have steak today? Great. You want to have these vegetables here? They're great. And it's all pre-done for you.
And that helps out with the sports that the kids are doing and everything else. You get home, the stuff's made, You try to make your time as efficient as possible and meal prep for the week. That way you're not cooking 4 nights a week or 5 nights a week.
And it brings them together. One thing that's happened in our house is like most Sundays that's the day where we're cooking, right? Where I got the barbecue out and we're making everything, and you'll see the involvement. My son, same age as Jade, comes out of his room twice a week. He's And but he knows, man, the moment that barbecue turns off and that food is ready, he has a sensor.
Right.
He knows it's time to eat, and then at 17 he works out, so he's trying to get bigger, stronger, those kind of things. And then now I have a little bit more influence or input into, hey, you know what? Try eating this.
Insight,
yeah, and then make sure you have this when you're done, and feed those muscles.
It's
those
it's
kinds
crucial,
of things.
A lot of people these days are on the low carb diet and stuff like that. If you're trying to build muscle, you do need a little bit of carbohydrates.
Right.
You need a little bit before and you need a little bit after.
Yeah.
That's what transport your protein to your muscles and helps you grow.
Right.
You want to prioritize your proteins, especially you're breaking down your muscle. Well, that's what your muscle's made out of.
Right.
Well, how are you going to make it bigger? You're going to eat more protein.
Right.
It just all depends on what you want to do and, and how you want to go about it. But for me, I couldn't do the fasting,
right.
The intermittent fasting. A lot of people can. I told my wife I'd never do that to her.
Right.
Because I'm a hangry individual.
Right, right.
Not so much anymore, but,
Right.
So, you'll find what works for you and just keep doing your research. And
Right. And don't be scared to try new things.
Right.
Right. Experience different stuff. Like, if there's a weird workout that I'm doing in the garage, and then I'll text my son like, hey, come check this out, right? Have you ever seen anything like this? Mm-hmm. Most of the time he's like, no.
Yeah,
and I'm not doing that either, But it creates different relationships, right? That are based on good things.
Yeah, for sure.
And so as somebody who has been in your inbox and texted you and I mean, you broke everything down. You helped me a lot. So I'm appreciative of that. for sure. And I always know, just like when I remodel my house or I have a project going on, you might have that same sensor my son does when the barbecue goes off, but like Bryce just shows up. Like, project going on? Oh, I'm here.
I have a knack for smoke. That's for sure. Yeah.
Right. He likes to get in the action. So let's transform let's talk about what's going on in the future. Moving ahead, what does your new business look like? What are the goals that you have kind of behind that? And how hard is it for you? Because I don't think we really talked about it. Working graveyards and then going into construction, right, simultaneously.
Yeah.
Right? There's not a lot of time for sleep in that.
That's one thing graveyard has taught me. I've been doing it for almost 4 years now. Not taught me, but it's what I do and what I have to do is I sleep in shifts. I know it's not the most healthy thing to do. I'm sure 90% of graveyard people sleep for 3-4 hours at a time, sometimes less. Sometimes there's 24-hour days, 26-hour days. Fortunately for me, it's not like that. It's been a few times. But you get used to it. Like me, some guys work rotating shifts. Never done it to where, these guys are usually refinery guys, and they have to work days for a couple weeks, then they work swings for a couple weeks, and they work graves for a couple weeks. There's time off in between that so they can adjust, but then you're losing days of sleep because you're just sleeping. So I do, usually get about 3 hours, and I can be up and moving around and pretty cognitively, I guess. It's hard, but the goal for me is with the business is to see where it goes. I want to create something. My son Cruz is 13 years old, or he will be here in April, and to teach him or to show him lead by example. Working with your hands, it's kind of a lost art and craft. These guys and girls, they don't really know how to do things with their hands anymore, and it's a dying industry. And I see that, and I said, light bulb goes off. Well, who's going to do the work? Who's going to do that stuff? Okay, well, I'll do that stuff. Yeah. And the goal is to grow, right? A friend of mine, Danny Garcia with Ace Renovations, I've seen him grow a ton over the last, 3-4 years just in that small amount of time, Right. And I see where he's going, and I ask him questions all the time. And my end goal, I think, is to create, hopefully one day, some generational wealth. In my younger days, I bought boats and stuff like that. Which, don't get me wrong, I love.
Yep, you do love your boat.
But I would like to have real estate properties and stuff like that. And in order to do that, I gotta put in the work.
Right.
And I'm willing to do that, and hopefully set the example and set up my family for better things ahead.
Perfect. Yeah. I love it, man. I love it. Bryce, I appreciate you coming in, man.
Thanks for having me.
I knew your journey is fantastic, and I really wanted to share your story. Thanks. Personal, professional, family life, all encompassing. So give you a moment and kind of let the people know if they want to follow you or in your company, how can they get a hold of you and how can they reach out to you?
Best way to get a hold of me is via text, probably. I do work graveyards. You can call me and leave me a message, but text messages always pop up. So my phone number is 925-727-4401, TB Hauling and Construction. Most of my content I post on my personal Instagram page, and I'll tag my construction company, hauling company. My Instagram handle is blperez925 at Instagram. And you can find me under my name, Bryce Perez, on Facebook. And you can see some of the stuff I've done. You see where we're going. And hope to talk to you soon.
Cool, man. Thank you so much. Appreciate you, brother.
Thanks for having me.
Yep.